I am Ellen Austin Lee, alum of LaSalle University's Solstice Masters in Fine Arts and Creative Writing program. Welcome to the fifth in a series of 8 evening readings taking place here in Auberdale, Mass. As part of our January 2024 10-day residency, the start of our spring semester. As we open this physical and virtual space, I would like to take note that we acknowledge that the territory on which LaSalle University stands is that of the Pawtucket and the Massachusetts people. LaSalle's campus is the place to honor and respect that history, and continued efforts of the Native and Indigenous community leaders who make up Eastern Massachusetts and the surrounding region. This statement is one small step in acknowledging the history that brought us to reside on the land and to help us seek understanding of our place within that history. Ownership of land is itself a colonial concept. Many tribes had seasonal relationships with the land we currently inhabit. Today, Newton and Auburndale are still home to Indigenous peoples, including the Nipmuc Nations and the Massachusetts peoples. For more information, please visit the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness and the Commission on Indian Affairs of the State of Massachusetts. And now for tonight's readings. First, we will have Solstice MFA Assistant Director Quintin Collins, who will be introduced by Solstice alum and grad assistant Cassie Rubico. Then we'll have Solstice Creative Nonfiction faculty member Amy Hoffman, who will be introduced by Solstice 4th semester student Mauricio Turco. Cassie, come on out.
Seriously, does this man need an introduction? As I started to write Quintin's introduction, I looked back at an introduction that I wrote for him at the winter residency in 2020. And I have to admit, I got a little emotional. It was Quintin's first residency as assistant director, and to prepare, I asked him what his goals were, both as a writer and in his new role at Solstice. I quoted him in that introduction as saying, "I hope to foster a community and create space for all voices, particularly those of underserved communities," end quote. Well, here's a taste of what Quintin has accomplished since that first introduction. 2 collections of poetry. His first, The Dandelion Speaks of Survival, a finalist for the 2020 Alice James Award and the 2021 Sheila Margaret Martin Book Prize. His second collection, Claim Tickets for Stolen People, was selected by Marcus Jackson as winner of the Journal's 2020 Charles B. Wheeler Poetry Prize and honor book for the Black Caucus of the American Library Association's 2023 Best Poetry Literary Award. Quintin has had several publications, including Sidereal Magazine, Superstition Review, Glass, a journal of poetry, Solstice Literary Magazine, and many, many, many more. Quintin has had multiple Best of the Net nominations. He was the winner of a Pushcart Prize, the Atlantis Award for the Poet's Billow, and he was a finalist for the 2020 Redivider Beacon Street Prize. He is poetry editor for Salamander. And here's the exciting part. Quintin, at the helm with director Meg Carney, has forged through a pandemic and a college closing to bring the Solstice MFA and Creative Writing program back to a growing community of writers of all voices. I'd say he's achieving his goal, and we're all better for it. I give you the cool, calm, quick quick-witted and collective Quintin Collins.
Okay. So before I get started, I wasn't planning on saying this, but I'm going to say this because I feel like I need to. I am so proud of all of you. You all have been doing amazing things in building this Solstice community this week. Not only what I've seen in person, but what I have seen in how you've welcomed our guest faculty in the Zooms as I've edited the recordings. So thank you so much for helping build this thing, because we cannot do it alone. And now that I've got that out the way, I'm going to read you some new stuff.
Yeah.
So I've been working on this manuscript for nearly 2 years now, and I finally am at a point where I have a sense of what I'm actually talking about, or what the poems are telling me I'm talking about. So the general gist of it is I'm writing a lot of stuff that's about really fighting for a sense of control and understanding and purpose, while also railing against some of those systems that are in place that grant usual senses of purpose. Me being a person raised in a Christian household, for me, a lot of that is religion, most prominently, but the idea being the unknown and the inevitabilities of life and how to address those and what that means, while also really understanding how much control we may or may not have over that. So the first poem I'm going to read for you is called Existential Dread Left on Red, and it is a contrapuntal poem. So I'm going to read it across this way first, and then I'm going to read the columns going down this way. Inevitabilities straitjacket me, and anxieties confine me within the questions of purpose, death, fate. So I drop a line to God, person-centered therapist, more pleading than prayer. I revolve arguments with myself as I turn in bed, punch the pillow at the futility of everything. Does anything matter? Do I have any control? I'd like to believe I tussle with truths. The unknowing stings as much as certainties. To all of this, God says nothing. Is that the blessing? That I cannot designate a grand design for suffering, the Lord as my scapegoat? Inevitability straitjacket me within questions, so I drop a line to God. More pleading than prayer with myself as I turn at the futility of everything. Do I have any control? I tussle with truths as much as uncertainties. Nothing. Is that the blessing? A grand design for suffering, me and anxieties confined, a purpose, death, fate, purpose-centered therapist? I revolve arguments in bed, punch the pillow. Does anything matter? I'd like to believe the unknowing stings. To all of this, God says that I cannot designate the Lord as my scapegoat. Don't worry, you don't have to clap after every poem. I'm just catching my breath. All right, so in the spirit of Meg talking about the heroic crown I'm working on, and Meg reading one of her sonnets from hers, I'm going to read one from the heroic crown that's in this manuscript. And the title of the whole thing is I Am Not Job, which hinges on the biblical story of Job. For those of you who don't know, I'm super paraphrasing here, but the idea being that there was a wager over whether Job, going through so much suffering, would still have his faith at the end of it. And at the end of the story of Job kind of being really upset with God, God comes down and says, you kind of have no idea how I make decisions, but here are some things to make you happy again. And I love a lot of things about religion in that stories, but that's one I take a lot of issue with. So this is an excerpt from the 15 sonnets that are in there. Why won't God amble in plain clothes among us, like the church that once lived is a car dealership? The lot sprawls from the turret where the logo used to lord over rows of vehicles and salespeople, unlike another church wedged between retailers and a strip mall. The church that dons the red roof of its past as a Pizza Hut. the church that swells the walls of someone's basement or gym. Holy, but not ornate in a way that startles familiarity. Finding God when I don't expect to find God. Until I Google why the building facade says Jubilee instead of Chrysler. The faith to sow seeds in ruin. Is this where miracles shed their brick and mortar? Lord, don't tell me the scale of my unknowing. And so this next poem is called Because I Said So, A Generational Curse. So for those of you who are here this summer, I read previous Generational Curse, and this is a recurring form in the manuscript that I actually picked up from Ian with a prompt to remix some existing language. And so this opens with an epigraph from Job chapter 38, verse 4 in the New International Version that says, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand." And this is at the point where God is talking to Job. Do as I say, not as I do. Do as I say, not as I do. Do as I do, the opposite. Do because I said so. Because I'm the parent and you're the child. Because I scrub scum from toilets and tubs. Do as I say, because I put the Eggos in the toaster. Do as I say, do as you do. Because I do as I do. Because I am the parent. You are why? Because I work to pay the bills. Why? I bought these toys for you. Why? Because I said so. That's why. That's why my 5 a.m. alarm increases the sleep you already interrupted 6 times. I put my book down to wipe your ass. Why? Because I said so. Because I said so. Because daddy forgets you are 3 years old. Your world is a mass of mysteries I must tidy. I must say so. Because you do as I do. When I lay these foundations, you orbit and watch. Then say as I say, when you giggle, okay, daddy, now time for you to go to timeout. Because I do as I do. Because I said so, because I'm your parent. Why? Ask me if I understand how, because I said so, bored my upbringing. And now I sow the saying in the field of your inquiries, and you do as I say, the obscurity in your response to my inquisition. Why? Why did you pour water on the floor? Did you leave the bathroom light on? Did you do as you do, as you do, as I do not explain? I just yell. Do as I say, you yell. I thunder from the heavens without wisdom to gift you my ibis to teach you how to count clouds from the ground. Daddy is sorry. Daddy is sorry. Daddy wagered faith he could be the best daddy who ever daddied. For you, I'm sorry. Do as I say, because daddy fails sometimes when he does as he does. Oh, it's hard. All right, so this one's called What Comes Next, and I picked this given the great greeting we've been given by the fruit flies while enjoying our meals. So this is What Comes Next. Each day, my daughter gets older, which prompts my fear of dying. And the fruit flies copulate in the compost bin, uncaring as to which of my hands will make contact first when I clap them into a memory. Their offspring arise to flit while I fumble with a sense of control. They also disregard the shadow when death crushes them between 2 palms, or so I like to believe. Something somewhere in this world evades its survival instincts like these pests zip past my clutches. My daughter's sentences evolve. Her legs extend closer to the floor as she hoists herself up over another obstacle to reach whatever it is she could want. And I can't help but unbalance my pride in envisioning her future with envisioning my demise. More than I have emptied the compost, fruit flies have lived and died and lived and died. And here I worry whether some God will greet me when I am pulverized out of life. All right, so this next poem is called Family Medical History. There is a large chronic illness threat that runs through this entire collection as part of this idea of like struggling with a sense of control. So this is in 13 sections that are individual sonnets. I'll give a little bit of a pause before each one, but if you've ever had to do an intake form on your family medical history, this will hopefully not be too painfully memorable for you. My grandmother stakes the needle in her thigh. My grandmother plants a needle in granddad's thigh. He cannot see well enough to inject his own insulin. My aunt welcomes the needle in her thigh. My mother swallows metformin to avoid the shots. My father takes metformin to avoid the injections. My sister is pregnant with my niece and gestational diabetes. At the end of my appointment recap, my doctor punctuates the note with, "You're pre-diabetic." My mother had her thyroid removed. I had my thyroid removed. Matching scars smile on our necks. Astigmatism, glaucoma, cataracts, blindness. Family portrait reflections reveal photographers perched in pupils, imprisoned in ocular afflictions. No other IBD issues as far as I'm aware. My parents investigate the status of my ailments and treatment success. Only months later, enveloped in a passing phrase, do they divulge their falls, fevers, broken bones, test for kidney function. A renal specialist roadmaps data so I understand what he prophesies from blood test results to decide if my baseline kidney function is higher. For God or dance, these knees won't bend low enough to feel some kind of spiritual groove, religious or just the right riff. My older sister laughs, then talks about joint pain from her arthritis. Within my tribe, many a cell has turned zombie, half have survived. To mutate and multiply, overrunning every good thing, leaving only nuclear options for cure or death. I pray my cells never learn this appetite. The only blood disease I conceal. Jesus paid it all on the cross after passing bread and wine to his disciples. A God could wash away sins, but would not take this cross from me. The prayers and praying I inherited still pulse in my veins in vain. My extended family hears the word of God just fine. For me, it's just whispers and hushes dampened in my ears. Skin conditions? I've been Black in America for a long, long time. I'll be Black in America for a longer time if being Black in America don't kill me first. Oh, and my mother had eczema as a kid. What about the diseases that bore no name for my forebears? What about the slave who doesn't know the difference between a bleeding disorder and a normal amount of blood to spill when you are beaten every day? Or the bodies wedged into a slave ship's holding decks as cargo, waiting in an ocean of each other's piss and shit. In this hell, who demarcates dysentery versus colitis in the blood? I'm not sure. I scratch family medical history onto intake forms. The full picture of me and mine infirmed so the doctor can know which stitch between us harbors frayed threads. He won't read it. He'll ask it all again. So two more, and then I'm out your way. So the working title of this collection, since Cassie was so eager to find out, is the syntax of my body writes the word of God. And so this next poem is the title poem. And it was one of the ones that I've written a little bit earlier, and then the one that follows is going to be a little bit similar in the same sense of trying to really understand how I can get this voice in here who has these criticisms, but also can't put down the source of the criticisms, and what that means to have anger toward an entity that you maybe think doesn't exist, but you can't be angry at if it doesn't exist. And it's a weird thing with faith. I don't really talk about faith too much publicly, but that's something I really want to work into this collection, because I mean, just being angry is easy, but really complicating that into the terms of what can't I put down about it. So Yes, this one here. The syntax of my body writes the word of God. God's fingers fiddled cosmic dust. Each digit fluttered the grains, then swished and swirled the particles before pinching enough to herald my body into the Lord's palm. The dust cascaded to fabricate my limbs granule by granule. God crafted the scheme that I must not question. Only prostrate myself before the mystery, and here I stand, my own cosmos of shifting atoms, faith and doubt. I corkscrew through living while the unknown beige just off screen. I sputter to starts, I screech to stops. Doctors record the gospel of my afflictions. Stretch my intestines straight. The span spells demise. WebMD is the Lord's most beloved false god. I pray for a miracle. On sleepless nights, I guzzle nihilism in the last dregs of Catholic guilt, or Baptist, or the self-flagellation for sins I won't confess before a judge, or the altar, or the knife. For the syntax of my body writes the word of God, and I cannot decipher the revelation. Liberate me from flesh to then ask the Lord, how much salvation can I buy with the blessings I labored to shoulder? My curved spine, a deaf right ear, astigmatism, hyperactive thyroid gland, ulcers that punctuate my guts. Is the love prescribed in the pain or the healing thereafter? Believers say both. I cathedral my poems, leave the door open for God. At the Advent, I will crumble it all to rubble, scatter the dust to land where it may. Thank you. I'm gonna take a sip before this last one. So this last poem is called Thy Will Be Done, a generational curse. And for those of us who remember our Lord's Prayer, Thy Will Be Done is taken from that. And thank you so much for being here tonight. Some of you are here against your will because you're a student, but thank you to folks who aren't. We really appreciate you being here, and folks in live stream. All right, so this is Thy Will Be Done, a generational curse. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thy will be done on earth as it is on earth as it is. Thy will be done. Hallowed be thy will be done. Give us this day thy will. Be done, be done, be done. I pray, be done. These spades that trench my insides, thy will, a disease. Be done, please, please, be done. Thy will on earth as it is, stoke suffering. Hallowed be my faith. Our Father, deliver us from thy will. If thy will, I must wilt in this bed, this illness omnipresent as thy absence. As thy will, put it in God's hands. I will. I will. I will. I will. I will pray and I will beg. I will. Thy will smuggled on earth. Is it in heaven? Thy will, thy kingdom, give us, deliver us, please. Thy will be done. My vessel malfunctions. Is this thy will or thy negligence? This battle is thy battle. Brandish thy scalpel. Art as thou art in heaven. Design, decree this disease defunct in my body. Thy will stampedes as collapse, but I clasp to this prayer. The doctors are out of options. Thy will, another code blue. Thy will, the pandemic. Thy will be done, be anything but a blade when another proclaims death and dying God's plan. Hallow my will to heal. What abrades my living until my living be done. Thank you.
Hello. Hey. Dude, that was really, really good. Can we get one more round of applause for Q, please? Hi, I'm Maurizio Turco. I'm a fourth semester creative nonfiction writer at Solstice, going into the final semester. And I have the, thank you. And I have the pleasure of introducing Amy Hoffman tonight. Amy Hoffman is the author of many works, which include the novels Dot and Ralphie and The Off Season, as well as the memoirs Lies About My Family, An Army of Ex-Lovers, My Life at the Gay Community News, and Hospital Time. For her work on An Army for Ex-Lovers, Amy was shortlisted for both the Lambda Book Award and the New York Publishing Triangle Judy Grant Award. Hospital Time was also shortlisted for the New York Publishing Triangle Judy Grant Award and was a New York Public Library Books for the Teenage Selection. Amy received her BA in English from Brandeis University and an MFA in Creative Writing from UMass Amherst. Aside from writing, she's also a freelance editor. She was the editor-in-chief of Women's Review of Books from 2003 to 2017, and has been an editor at Gay Community News, South End Press, and the Unitarian Universalist World Magazine. She has also taught writing and literature at the University of Massachusetts and at Emerson College. Amy has served as the director for the Massachusetts Foundation of the Humanities and the Women's Lunch Place, which is a daytime shelter for homeless women. When Amy has not been writing or editing, she has also played a large role in the activism for Jewish and gay rights. She has worked for Peace with the Jamaica Plain Action Network and Jewish Women for Justice in Israel and Palestine. She has also served on the boards of GCN, Sojourner, Gay and Lesbian Advocates and Defenders, and the Boston Lesbian and Gay History Project. Though I have not had the opportunity to workshop or work with Amy on my writing during my first 3 semesters, I did have the pleasure of taking her class, Elements of Memoir, during last winter's residency. It was this class's suggested reading list which also introduced me to Dave Edgar's book, What is the What? A Survival Story of a Sudanese Refugee, which I view as an important book that all should read. In this class, we explored the idiosyncrasies of memory and the truth in memoir writing. I say we because the class only consisted of Amy and myself. Though I was the only student, Amy taught this course as if she was teaching a room full of students with patience, dedication, and compassion. While Solstice's numbers were small at the time, I took advantage of the situation since I knew I would most likely would not have the opportunity to work one-on-one with a person so sweet, funny, brilliant, and extraordinary as Amy. Please join me in welcoming Amy Hoffman.
Thank you. Thank you, Maurizio, so much for that beautiful introduction. And thank you for everyone who's here. I'm going to read a couple of sections from my novel In Progress. Although I have to be honest with you that at this point, progress has ground to a halt, possibly never to start up again. These sections are about one of the main characters, Molly, and her mother, Cora. Molly recently got laid off from her job as a grant writer for a shelter for homeless women because of a change in priorities from one of their funders, and she's waitressing at a coffee shop. There's a lot more to say about Molly, like that she's a lesbian, and she and her gay roommate, Oscar, are trying to get pregnant, but you don't need to know all the details right now. Cora has severe mental illness and is living in her van on the streets of Boston. Molly hadn't seen her mother around lately, which happened from time to time, but it always made Molly nervous. For a woman like Cora, living on the street in her van, everything can go to hell in one crazy moment. For the past few days, on Molly's way home from work, she had noticed a new homeless person, square face, great crew cut, installed in the vestibule of the drugstore, spare changing the world as it passed by. She decided to ask, "Excuse me, sir, have you seen misgendered again? How would you feel? It's fucking Mavis, okay, girlie?" "I'm Molly, and I was trying to be polite." "Polite? I'm fucking insulted." You worked down the coffee shop, right? Getting all those tips? You got anything for me? Molly scrabbled a hand around in her pocket, found 2 quarters and a couple of bills, and handed Mavis the quarters. Bad day? Asked Mavis. Quarters used to be acceptable, thought Molly. The stuffing was poking out of Mavis's quilted jacket in places, and it didn't look like it had ever been very warm. Molly was regretting her decision about the bills. She worried too much about money. Why couldn't she be more generous? I'll do better next time, she promised. I'll be right here occupying my spot. This is your spot? I used to see a guy. It's my spot. Bequeathed to me since Jack moved on. Bequeathed? This sounded alarming. He didn't die, girlie, said Mavis, Molly, whoever. He just, moved on. Wasn't having any luck around here. Like now, you're giving me quarters. What am I supposed to do with those, I ask you? Won't even buy me a Dunkin' coffee. And forget Starbucks. You think it's 1980 or something? I told you I'd do better next time. You meet a guy, Mavis continued, and after a while they move on. That's the way of it, life in the poverty lane. Don't I know it? My mom, big whoop. We all got moms one way or another. Molly persisted. She sometimes parks her van around here, pretty often actually, so we can check in with each other. Any chance you've seen her? Seen her, said Mavis. I see everybody. She's one of the good ones. Into crystals and whatnot. Lady tried to heal me, dancing around with a piece of quartz, but I wasn't having it. Heal me from what? Doctor, heal thyself. Quartz, said Molly. The crystals were a bad sign. So that's your mom. Well, I ain't seen her vehicle lately, if that's what you're after. She probably moved on or broke down. Things are fucking jalopy. Even I can see that, and I got no use for one. Don't know nothing about him and don't want him. Mavis pulled her jacket cuffs over her chapped hands. She'll turn up. Everybody does. Don't stress. Come on, Mavis. How would you feel? Your mom living in a van. Mavis gave Molly a look. How do you think I'd feel? Molly felt her cheeks redden. Sorry, dumb question, she said. She reached into her pocket again, pulled out the bills, and handed them over. After all, she thought they were singles, but it turned out they were a couple of tens. She hadn't meant to give quite so much. Hey, thanks, said Mavis. She stood laboriously, stashed the cardboard she'd been sitting on in her shopping cart, and shook Molly's hand. Guess I'll go off and squander it on liquor and cigs. See you around. She limped off down the street, pushing her cart. A few days later, Mavis looked up Molly at the coffee shop. She's found out some information. Hey, girlie, yelled Mavis. Are you working here or posing for the cover of Life magazine? Life magazine, said Molly. What? Never mind. I thought this place served coffee. Cream and sugar? Nothing, none of that crap. Black. You startled me, said Molly. You don't usually come inside. Yeah, well, I don't want to scare the other patrons, but you didn't look busy and I thought you'd want to hear my news. About my mom? No, about Donald Trump. He's a grifter. Yeah, about your mom. Panicky. Molly wondered if she really wanted to know. Mavis, is she okay? My coffee, Mavis interrupted. The service in this place sucks. No wonder I don't come in here. Molly filled a mug and put it on the counter in front of Mavis. Stop screwing with me, Mavis. Just tell me what you heard. Mavis slurped at her coffee. Could be worse. At least it's hot. Look, I'm sorry to tell you about this, but it seems like your mom was pink papered a couple weeks ago. Oh, Mom, sighed Molly. What'd you do now? Pink papered. In other words, carted off to the loony bin. Molly was all too familiar with the process. Cora could seem threatening, but she was never violent or even sincerely suicidal. She was just weird. She would see people's auras more and more clearly until these eclipsed the people themselves, and Cora would be moved to prophecy to them, knowing from experience that they themselves could not see their own bright emissions. So according to Mavis, this was the story. Cora had been hanging out on Washington Street, having a gossip with the gals after a soup kitchen lunch, when she had seen a man coming toward her, whose beauty, she suddenly cried out, was not of this world, whose skin shone like ebony, who was crowned with a halo of gold. Gold meaning paradise. Well, the medieval painters had not gotten this wrong. He was a vision like none she'd ever encountered, and she prostrated herself before him, who must be a messenger angel, his wings folded away under his bulky overcoat. She grabbed his feet and kissed his worn shoes, and he fell on top of her. Tears in her eyes, she grabbed at the seam of his coat to free his wings, crying, "Fly, fly to heaven." He started yelling, "This lady tackled me and now she's tearing up my coat. What the fuck? Get her off me." Passers-by stepped around them, a couple of homeless struggling on the downtown crossing sidewalk, probably high, or lovers. The city was becoming more grotesque every day. Eventually, as Cora and the man rolled and tangled along the sidewalk, a police officer on a bicycle showed up. She dismounted and leaned down to separate them. "Stop," Cora shouted at her. "Do not lay your hands on me. Do not hurt this messenger." As she spoke, her grip loosened and the man extricated himself, stood, and brushed himself off. "I'm going to go now," he said carefully to the police officer. He showed her his empty hands, palms up. "See? Nothing. No trouble. Okay?" He pointed at Cora, who was still rolling around on the sidewalk and crying. "There's something wrong with that lady, though." The policewoman looked at him skeptically. "You know her?" "Never seen her before in my life. She pulled me down." "She pulled you? You're a big fellow." "Didn't see her coming. I'm peaceful, ma'am. Keeping my head down and staying out of trouble." The policeman shook her head. "Okay, but don't worry, I'm out of here," he said. He turned and walked away fast, almost jogging. The policewoman looked down at Cora at her feet. "What's going on here?" "The angel," Cora babbled. "The messenger. You frightened him and his gold stopped shining, and your aura is dark, dark. What is this nonsense? I thought it was black, but it's dark blue. I see that now. Blue, blue like sad, blue like melancholy, like the night sky with no moon and no stars, no way to navigate. Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry. It's no good. It's no good at all." Cora stood and tried to take the policewoman in her arms. Alarmed, the policewoman jumped away. "Get off of me. You better watch it, lady. You're on the road to assaulting a police officer." But Cora refused to let go. My dear, do not resist me. I can help." "That does it. I'm turning you in." Turning her head, she spoke into the walkie-talkie on her shoulder, calling for backup. "So that's it," concluded Mavis. "So I hear. Could be something totally different for sure." "Pink paper is only for 3 days," Molly pointed out. Mavis shrugged. "Maybe she signed herself in after that. Whatever. Nobody's seen hide nor hair of her since that cop got her." "Poor Mom. She never means any harm, but she frightens people," said Molly. "Just because she's not like everybody else. They don't get her." She wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. "I don't even know where to start looking for her this time." "Hey, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, said Mavis, looking uncomfortable. "Don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. It's not your problem. She didn't attack anyone, did she? She wouldn't do that." "Nah, not that I know of," said Mavis, draining her coffee cup. "Just off a rocker." She dug in her jacket pocket, put a quarter on the counter. Molly pushed it back to her. "On the house," she said. "See what I mean? Nobody wants quarters, not even you," Mavis waved at her. "So long, girlie. Good luck with your mom. I'll be working my spot if you want me." "Yeah, thanks," said Molly. She wiped her eyes again. This kind of thing hadn't happened in a long time, a few years actually. She thought maybe Cora's cycles had slowed, that she had stabilized. Not that you could call living in a van stabilized. Molly shook her head and laughed at herself. Not living in a rust bucket van like Cora's. It had a scary looking mattress in the back that Cora had salvaged from who knows where, and she had surrounded it with her collection of crystals and rocks and rhinestones, Fox astrology manuals and bestsellers from the Little Free Library. Whatever caught her eye or called out to her with sudden meaning. There were a few milk crates for her clothes, but Cora had her routine and it sort of worked. Meals at a round of shelters and soup kitchens, clothing and toiletries from same, a weekly shower courtesy of a sympathetic former running buddy now housed, temp warehouse jobs when she needed the cash for gas or repairs or a respite in a motel when the weather got too cold or too hot or the routine got too exhausting and she needed a few nights in an actual bed. If a job was unattainable, she hit up Molly, who came through. Molly had been coming through for her mother, since forever, since she was a little kid. Her dad had fled early on, not that she could blame him. She thought she remembered him pushing her in a playground swing, but that could easily have been an image she cooked up based on one of Cora's manic spiels. Molly was like a child of immigrants whose parents don't speak English, who translates the new country for them. Cora, too, was an immigrant from some nether region of the psyche, untutored in the customs and requirements of this one. Or maybe she had known them at one time, but had mostly forgotten after boinging up and down mentally for so long. Although sometimes she came up with an appropriate action, a birthday present on the correct date, a parent-teacher conference that didn't go off the rails, a month's bills paid and mailed. But there were other times. Cora always meant well, or almost always, when the paranoia didn't get her. Thank you.
Thank you for those wonderful readings, Quintin and Amy. Those were terrific. Can we get another round of applause?